Side Hustle Show 111, how to make money as a freelancer without competing for jobs on Elance or oDesk.
Welcome to the Side Hustle Show, where aspiring part-time entrepreneurs learn how to turn their side hustle dreams into reality. Because your 9 to 5 may make you a living, but your 5 to 9 makes you alive. And now, your host, Nick Loper.
Hey everybody, Nick Loper here. Welcome to the Side Hustle Show. This is episode 111, how to make money as a freelancer without racing to the bottom on price or competing on the massive freelance marketplaces like Elance or oDesk. I'm excited to welcome Daniel DiPiazza back to the show from rich20something.com. Daniel is one of the smartest people I know, and I enjoy reading his stuff, even though I am no longer a 20-something. I think it's it's something we can all relate to, we can all aspire to, and he's just somebody who's always great to chat with. And you may remember him from way back in episode 35 when he shared with me how he's using his marsupial method, which I don't know if he's trademarked yet, that took his tutoring business from $18 an hour to $100 an hour. So if you haven't heard that one yet, go back into the archives and give that one a listen. It's episode 35. This week, in this episode, you're going to learn how to identify profitable skills you already have, how to validate your service, find your first clients, overcome objections, and seal the deal. All the notes and highlights, along with Daniel's top tips, are available to you in a free downloadable PDF at sidehustlenation.com/111/111 or through the link in the episode description of your podcast player app. And Daniel has actually put together his own little bonus, some really juicy content I know you're going to love, over at rich20something.com/sidehustle, all one word, and 20, like not spelled out. Definitely encourage you to check that out, and I'll remind you of that URL again at the end of the show. Let's get into it. Well, I'm excited to dive into this stuff on freelance domination. It seems like this is what Rich 20-something has really niched down to focus on in the past year or so. So where do we start with this stuff? Like figuring out what we can sell, what we can freelance on. Yes.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's always funny. I love doing podcasts because just like on any TV or radio, it's like it's the guest and the host always be like BSing before the thing starts, and then the thing starts and we're like, well, tell me the exact steps. But like these are the conversations we have in everyday life, right? You'll be around, you'll be out at a dinner table with a bunch of friends and you're running ideas by them like, hey guys, what do you think about this? Like, is this a good idea? And you'll be BSing with your friends. And these are kind of the ways that we try to come up with ideas, right? We're trying to figure out what the best fit for us is, right?
I guess, but I'm, looking back to my, dinner conversation from last night, and I'm trying to think of if any ideas came up over nachos.
Sometimes they do, but I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is idea generation is hard. We feel like it's really hard. We scour online. We look at we scour online. We look at for blog posts to find good ideas. We talk to our friends. We talk to our family. We rack our brain, and it's hard to come up with an idea that we think is going to be profitable, right? And that's kind of, I think that's everyone's major sticking point.
Yeah, absolutely. And some. Yeah, no, continue on that.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, today I think the most important thing is I want to kind of try to help everyone take away. I want to help you try to figure out how to find a profitable idea, and then I want to show you how to find clients that are going to pay for it. And then we'll talk a little bit about ethical persuasion and how to really kind of get inside people's heads in an ethical way to show them that what you're offering is valuable. Most people never get started because they can't come up with a good idea. And I think the first thing you need to remember is, well, actually, let's back it up. Because for some people who aren't familiar with the term, what is freelancing, right? So freelancing is essentially just offering skills that you already have to individual clients rather than working for a company and using some of those skills to power a company, right? And I think that most people don't think about freelancing because when we think about entrepreneurship, we think about startups in Silicon Valley. We think about getting investor money, and we think about, Mark Zuckerberg. And I think in reality, most people, when they're making the transition from working their 9 to 5 to entrepreneurship, freelancing is kind of that hidden middle step. And I think it's overlooked and underappreciated.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right on that. I think this is one of the fastest ways for people to get started because you don't need to build a product. You don't need to build an audience. You don't need to build a website even, at the very beginning. And it's just, I guess the beef against it is it's not the allure of passive income. It's not a 4-hour work week type of business. Like it's still kind of hustling for business, trading time for money. But there's ways you can grow out of that or scale that. But what's your take on that?
Yeah, and here's the thing. Well, first of all, you have to remember that in terms of like your return on investment, or the return on your time, people negate freelancing because they think, oh, well, I still have to work for my money. But think about how you're compensated for your regular job, your everyday job. So you have, a salary or you have an hourly wage, and you almost don't even see all the money that's being taken away from you working at those jobs. So, a good example is, and I use this example a lot, and I'm pretty sure my mom doesn't listen to podcasts, so she'll never know this, but I was talking to her a couple months ago, or maybe this was over a year ago, and she's a paralegal. So she works in law offices, helping attorneys to get cases ready, all that stuff. And I was talking to her, and I was, we were talking about, I guess, salaries, and she makes somewhere between $30 and $40 an hour, which is pretty good. And most people will be happy to make $30 or $40 an hour. Mm-hmm. But we were talking about what she does for her clients, and she bills them at about $150 an hour, right? And so the law firm collects the $150 and then breaks her off like $35 from that.
Yeah.
But she's the one sometimes handling the clients end to end, like literally, onboarding them, walking them through things, because it's really her role to make it so that they don't even have to see the attorneys. Like she wants to handle most of the work so the attorneys don't have to do anything. And the attorneys still end up, charging the full $150, and she only gets a small percentage of that. And I said, well, that means that the skills that you're doing, the work that you're doing is actually worth $150 an hour, and the firm that you're in is giving you 35 of that, right?
Right. Well, similar to the story you told last year, on your tutoring business they're paying you 18 and meanwhile charging 100 or something to the clients.
Exactly. And we forget about that. And we forget about the fact that, when you're in a company, they're going to spend sometimes tens of thousands of dollars to train you. They have health insurance sometimes that they'll give you. And so all that gets kind of built into the background, and you get this reduced wage.
Yeah.
And the good thing about freelancing is that when you learn how to position yourself right, you can kind of maximize your wage by charging prices that allow you to choose how you spend that income. So, yes, there are taxes involved, but at the end of the day, you can charge someone $100, $150 an hour with the right skill set, and then you can decide how you want to really divide that income, right?
Yeah. You think people should start, like in the case of your mom, like should she start a paralegal freelancing thing? Is that a thing?
Well, let's talk about how to find ideas, right? And I'll touch on that. I won't forget that. So when we're talking about ideas, I think that the most important thing to remember is that, profitable skills are everywhere, right? So, if you're a fitness nut, you could be doing that by yourself. You could be personally training people. If you're great with numbers, accountants are huge as freelance entrepreneurs. If you're a computer whiz and you have IT skills or programming skills, those are really valuable skills that you can help someone with. Are you good at teaching? You can start up a tutoring company. If you play an instrument, you can teach someone to learn as well. If you love animals, you can dog sit, you can pet sit. There's everything that you've ever done in your life, you can probably attach a monetary value to it and help someone out with it. If you come up with an idea just by thinking about the things you do in your everyday life, so things people tell you you're good at, hobbies that you have, things you're already doing at your job, things you've always wanted to kind of teach or help someone with, you can validate it pretty easily, and you can see if it's worth your time pretty easily. And so I have this concept of what I call a 3-question validation.
Okay.
And so it's pretty simple. The first question to ask yourself is there competition? You want people to have you want your business to have competition. You want there to be some competitive climate. A lot of people are looking for an idea that's completely, unique and no one has done this before. But I don't really like that, because I like to see that there's been a demand for this. I'd like to see that there are other clients and there's already an existing customer base, and then I can differentiate myself from there.
Okay.
The second thing is, obviously, does this competition have business already, right?
So if there's competition out there, but everyone is starving, that's not
exactly
not a good sign.
Exactly. It's like you look at the film industry and you have all these actors and all these like directors and writers, and there's a lot of competition, but most of them aren't working, and so maybe that's some field you should stay away from.
Okay.
And then, so is there competition? Do they have clients? And then the last question is, can you do it differently or better? Right. And so if you ask yes, or if you answer yes to all these questions, then that's a good idea to go with. Right. So, and you can solve this validation pretty simply just by Googling it. So I did this with my girlfriend. She wanted to start a dog walking business, like dog walking, pet sitting.
Okay.
And so we just Googled online. We Googled Santa Monica dog walker, and we live in Venice, but Santa Monica is really close, and so it's a good market. And we Googled it online, and a lot, like I think like 5 or 6 results came up immediately, and you could see that they had Google reviews, they had Yelp reviews. So people were using these dog walkers. They were leaving reviews, so they had clients, they had customers, and we could even look at those results and see kind of how they were operating, what the prices were, and how they were doing their business, to think about ways to do it differently. And boom, all of a sudden we have a validated idea.
Sure. What did you come up with to differentiate the dog walking? That seems very much like a kind of a commodity thing, like I will walk your dog.
You'd think it is a commodity, but it's first of all, you have to remember that, like, at least in our area, Santa Monica, Venice, it's very like, I don't know, I guess the politically correct term would be like foofy. It's very foofy. And everyone is really into their dogs. Like, I mean, I think women buy purses specifically to put their dogs in around here. It's a very it's that type of community.
Yes.
So one thing that Sarah does, which I think is really cute, is after the dogs stay with her for the first time, whether it's like dog sitting or whether it's just pet walking, she'll take a picture of the dog and she'll put it in her frame that she has and give it in a little gift bag to the clients.
Okay, wow.
It sounds crazy, right? But they love this because these clients are obsessed with their dogs. And you can tell that. You can even look, when we did the Google search, we were looking at some of the reviews of these different dog walking services, and they're like, this I love this dog walking service because they gave my dog, fresh purified water and organic treats. And that's the type of stuff that they like. So we're like, okay, well, how can we get even foofier?
Yeah. We joke about it, but like if somebody did that, for our dog, I would love them for it too.
Yeah, awesome. And and really at the end of the day, with any business, people do business with you because they like you. So if they like Sarah more because she gives them nice things in addition to her great service, then they're going to come back.
Okay. No, so that gives us some good ideas to come up with kind of what skills we may already have. And that's essentially like, look, I don't need to go learn something new. I already have something. And I think it was from one of your posts. Hey, by definition, if you've ever held a job ever, like that's a skill worth paying for. Someone was paying you to do something, and trying to use that validation method to say, like, if this guy was paying me, if my employer was paying me to do that, there's probably other people that might be looking for a similar service.
Oh, exactly. And and kind of just bringing it home with your question about my mom, what would she do? Would she open up a freelance paralegal business? Well, sometimes you need to think not quite outside the box, but just right next to the box. So, for instance, with paralegal services, I don't know, you'd have to do some testing, but I'm pretty sure that like paralegals stay within firms.
Yeah.
Right. And so you might have a job where you think, oh man, my job isn't really applicable outside of my current employer, and so I don't have any skills. So, but maybe you think right next to the box. So, like in my mom's case, she's a paralegal, but she's had now probably 15 years of experience negotiating legal claims. She's done a lot of work in the insurance industry, so she has the skills to become a consultant. Right? She could become a legal consultant, or you have someone like maybe someone who works as like a physician's assistant, right? When you're like, well, I can't treat patients outside of
right
hospital. That would be probably weird and illegal. But you're like, well, I work with a lot of kids, so maybe I can do like babysitting, or maybe I can do like you have teachers who don't teach on the weekends, but they'll do like kids party hosting, right? They'll do stuff like that. So just interesting little tweaks to existing skill sets that you already have, but maybe not the exact thing you're doing for work.
Okay, a little pivot to to a slightly different market. Okay.
Think about the general area. So you might not be able to serve at food at outside of the restaurant that you work at, but maybe you can do catering, stuff like that.
Okay. Like one of the side hustles I started recently is like this book editing business, because I it was something that I needed, and I kind of had got my first few clients through word of mouth and actually through Fiverr.
Nice.
And it's kind of fun. Like I can walk on the treadmill desk upstairs, and oftentimes I'm learning something, since I said, look, I'm only going to do nonfiction. Like if you need somebody for your vampire romance novel, like I'm not the right guy for that. So I'm learning something. I'm walking. It's kind of fun. But it's like it was not necessarily a skill that I had exercised since high school, when you're like grading or kind of reviewing your classmates' papers. But it was something like, okay, I've now written several books, and this is something that I think I can do, because I like when I read other people's Kindle books, like I'm like mentally being like, ooh, there's a typo, and people are probably doing the same with mine. So hopefully they're relatively clean. But like you read some of them, and you're like, ooh, they didn't catch that, or they very clearly didn't hire a proofreader or something like that. So,
well, I mean, and I think that's perfect, because that's a skill that you have, but you weren't always thinking about monetizing it, right? It's just something that you already did, but you're like, oh wow, maybe this is a business,
right? And it's not a huge portion of the business, but it's kind of fun as different clients come in and stuff. It gives me a sneak peek on some of these books that are coming out.
Absolutely. And and that's one thing I wanted to kind of highlight, is that if you look at the way that the economy is going now, I think people are really becoming creative at making their own jobs and figuring out things that other people will pay for. And a lot of that is leaning towards extreme personalization, right? And so this isn't necessarily freelancing, but I've seen a lot of advertisements, especially on Facebook recently, for services that do things like they come to your house. So for instance, everyone's really familiar with Uber, things like that. And maybe you even do like Grubhub, where they deliver food to your house, which is really cool. But now I've seen ads for like applications where you can press a button and a masseuse will come to your house, right? Or you can press a button and they'll deliver like wine or alcohol and chocolate to your house as like a little party starter. So people are realizing now that we don't necessarily have to depend on these large companies to get the things that we want. We can start businesses ourselves that cater to people's individual needs by solving a problem, right?
Okay.
Yeah. And so it's just a new way to change the way that you're thinking about what you have that's valuable, And a lot of times you can either use a skill that you already have, or you can try to find problems that you see exist, maybe problems that you've had personally that you've encountered, or things that your friends, family, and people around you have kind of mentioned, and so that's causing them strife, and you can solve that problem.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me, one of our, I think, mutual friends, Meredith, was in my mastermind group last year. She started doing this meal delivery service for law students.
Nice.
It's like they were like studying for the bar in New York, and this test is so intense that you literally like don't have time to eat, or you don't have time to prepare food for yourself. And so she started this like little meal delivery service for them. And I don't know if she's still doing it, but I was like, that's perfect. Like, rather than trying to, build a blog, build up authority, it's like very, very simple. Like, here's my product. Here's what I'm going to deliver to you. Here's how much it costs. Here's where you can sign up. Very, very cool. That kind of transitions us into the next phase, which is finding those first customers, trying to get a little bit of real validation in terms of dollars and cents.
Yeah, man, and that's a great transition. And so one of the more popular things I've talked about is Elance and oDesk and those online marketplaces. And I'll say that those online marketplaces can work well, depending on what your skill set is, but it works well specifically for like people who do things on the computer. So, programmers, designers, developers, things like that. And it does work well, and it can work. But a lot of people feel left out because they're like, well, I don't have a skill that's, transferable to some sort of internet job market. So again, I can't do this. Well, that's not true. The first thing I would do is something that I call warm canvassing. And so if you think of, cold canvassing, you think of like, I don't know if you've ever had to sell things door to door.
Yes.
Yeah, it's horrible. Like when I was a kid, we had these like world's greatest chocolate bars, world's finest chocolate.
Oh my gosh, we definitely sold those too.
Yeah, I think there's no child.
I can picture the box. The green ones were money. The green ones were so good.
The green ones were good, but it's like, I don't know if it's the world's finest. It's a little bit of a hyperbole, but it's good chocolate. But come on, So I had to sell those. I had to sell popcorn door to door as a Boy Scout. I had all these different things I had to sell, and I was never comfortable with it because it was always a very like a cold approach.
Yeah.
It's like just knocking on doors. Plus, I didn't really like the product that much, so it was hard for me to sell those things, and it's really uncomfortable. But warm canvassing is kind of the flip side of that. Warm canvassing is when you find people who already need what you have, and it's a very simple pitch. So, for instance, if you've ever been at have you ever said to yourself something like, "Oh, you're looking at like a restaurant's website. You're like, man, this website sucks. I could build a better one."
Yes.
Or yeah, exactly, right. Or you're at like your local chiropractor and you're looking at his advertisements or his brochures and you're like, these look like crap. I could totally make a better one than this. Or or you maybe you live in an apartment complex and their gym is always full of people, but they need a trainer. You're like, well, man, I could train the people here. Or maybe, like you were saying, like you're reading through someone's Kindle book and they're like, man, they're making all these mistakes. I should fix these mistakes. These are bad. The key to warm canvassing is looking for local small businesses or people that are doing things and trying to figure out where you can help them just by kind of applying your own skill set to them. So a way I like to kind of to phrase this is, you think about someone who has a certain skill set. You think about maybe you take a store like a shoe repair store, and you're like, wow, they've had a shoe repair store and they've had a family business for 30 years, and they're really good at what they do, shoe repair, but they're really, really bad at marketing and advertising. Which you'll often find, and what you'll find is that people have one skill set in their wheelhouse, and they usually don't even have the other skill set that they really need to kind of complete their business, right? Like they're good at one thing, but they're completely unaware of where they're lacking in other areas.
Yeah.
And you can use this to your advantage by finding different places where people need your help or can use your skills, and you can pitch to them pretty easily.
Okay. No, I definitely come across these websites like, oh, this website is horrible. I can totally build a better one. But
yeah.
I like that idea. Warm canvassing, finding people who already need what you have or what you can provide.
Yep. And so I guess there are kind of a couple of ways to approach this. So and this is actually a pretty low pressure way for you because you don't have to at first put too much effort into finding these people because you interact with things every day that probably can use your help in some way. But so you're walking through your daily life, you're at the doctor's office, you're looking at websites online, you're interacting with people, and you find people who might be able to use your services. And so the first kind of thing you want to do is you want to think, all right, well, how can I bring this to their attention? How can I show them that what they're doing could potentially be, improved by what I'm offering, right? And so this is kind of where we get into what I like to call calling their baby ugly. Have you ever heard of that before?
No, go ahead. Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of a mean little phrase, but basically it's like I was saying, most small business owners have some sort of primary wheelhouse, and then they literally have no idea what they're doing outside of that. And the worst part is that they don't even know what they don't know, right? So it's your job to call their baby ugly and then offer really, really good value. And so basically the idea of calling their baby ugly is saying, hey, look, what you're doing is not right. It's actually pretty bad. And you want to ethically create like almost a sense of like almost doom and gloom and urgency. And you got to show them, hey guys, look, like you have this website, the design could be a lot better, and you're probably losing a lot of money because this isn't set up in a way that's going to get you, recurring customers. This is a bad thing. Do you guys know what's going on here?
Okay. And a lot of times it'd be like, oh yeah, some guy built that for us like 7 years ago and we have questions since.
Yeah, exactly. And so what you want to do is you want to the first thing you want to do is think about, well, what are all the things that could go wrong if they don't hire you, right? And so you bring this up in an ethical way, in an ethical kind of empathetic way. You're like, hey guys, I noticed that this funnel isn't looking good. Like I noticed that the email autoresponders are kind of messed up. The site design is kind of lacking. Have you guys thought about this? Like, have you thought about how to improve this, and really paint the picture of kind of the worst things that could happen, like potentially the bad things that could happen from them not improving this area of their business. And the idea here is that if they're kind of already lacking, you want to show them where they're lacking. And if they're already doing okay, you want to kind of paint the picture about how much better they could be with your services, right? And you always want to kind of tie it back to the primary metric, which is most cases is probably money. So basically you want to show people how what they're doing is losing them money or not allowing them to make as much money as possible. And you want to kind of draw this to their attention lightly, because a lot of times people don't even realize what they're doing is possibly, siphoning money off, right?
Okay. And we're talking about websites in this case, but it could be like you said, people at the gym be like, hey, I noticed you're performing that lift horribly wrong. You're going to injure yourself. I don't, like, how do you be like, and here's my card, I'm a personal trainer. Like, you be like super sleazy about it.
Yeah. In the gym, it's kind of weird. Especially, I think there's like an aversion to telling people like, oh, that's bad form in the gym, right? Because you don't want to come off as that D-bag.
Yeah.
In the gym situation, it might be more like you see someone and maybe they're deadlifting and their whole back is making a C shape, and you're like, oh God, they're going to break their back. And so you might frame it in a sense of like, going up to them and saying, hey, what are you working on? Oh, back looks cool. So like, give me, just give me an idea. What's your programming like? Oh, you want to get bigger and stronger? That's cool. Well, actually I train athletes. Why don't you take my card and check out my website? There might be some good tips for you to help improve your deadlift. Right.
Okay.
And so you can frame it in a way of being empathetic towards them. Like, hey, I see you're trying to improve. Well, I have some cool things to improve your deadlift, but not necessarily call them out where you make them feel too bad about it.
Okay.
Right. And I think it really depends on who you're approaching. But one thing you might be able to do to kind of loop into this is you might be able to ask probing questions, right? So again, you'd gauge it to who you were interacting with and what the context was. But a lot of times if you ask really specific questions, people will be able to tell right off the bat that you know what you're talking about. So for instance, let's say you're approaching a company because you want to do social media consulting for them. You might ask questions like, hey, have you ever thought about how you're going to insert the blank, figure out what, you're filling these blanks in. Like, have you ever thought about how you're going to do X, Y, Z? Or I've been looking at your website or your product and your service. Why haven't you X, Y, Z? Or how do you know that? Or what happens if? So you're finding people who need your services, and then you're kind of just picking their brain a little bit to figure out kind of what's going on with them. And you're piquing their interest, but you're also showing that you know what you're talking about by asking them questions that would only be asked by someone who has a little bit of a deeper knowledge in the field.
And you're typically doing this like face-to-face, for brick and mortar stores locally, or you can do this online as well?
I think this works in both ways. And I think that you have to be intelligent about it. You have to do some good research and figure out who it is you're approaching, but this can be brick and mortar or it can be online too.
Okay. Any so then what's the next step? Like, here's my proposal of what I can do for you. It's going to be $10,000. Sign here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the next step after that is you kind of have to figure out you're finding these people who need your services. You're kind of creating a little bit of doubt by showing them some things they could be doing wrong. You're asking good questions so that they know that you're paying attention to their needs. And then you want to offer them something valuable, right? So it might be, let's go back to the trainer, for example. So you see someone and they're doing a horrible deadlift in the gym. You're like, ooh, they're going to kill themselves. You say, hey, I train elite athletes, so this might actually help you. Check out my website. I have a bunch of really cool tutorials on doing deadlifts. It's going to make your deadlift stronger. And you direct them to your website, show them some really cool free value, and then when they're on their website, when they're on your website, make sure that you have a form to have them sign up. Or better yet, get their number and their contact information when you see them in the gym, and say, hey, check out the videos on my site and try some of the techniques I showed you for deadlifts on there, and let me know how it goes. And get their contact information, and then email them in a week or so after they've had a chance to look at your stuff and say, hey, how'd that deadlift video go? Did that work out for you? What happened there? And start a dialogue with them. And most likely one of two things will happen. They'll either have tried it and it will have worked well for them, or they'll have tried it and there'll be some questions, or maybe they won't have tried it at all. But at that point, you can kind of bring them into your circle and say, hey, let's talk about how to get your deadlift up. And at this point, you're not even selling anything yet, but you just want to kind of give them almost a free consult to figure out what their biggest problem is and solve it for them right there.
Right. How does that kind of transition into paid work? I mean, with the website design stuff, with the social media stuff, I could see that, easily transitioning into like a contract. Is that typically what happens next?
Yeah, I mean, typically what happens next is, so you find people who need your services, and you ask them some questions, you give them some good free value, and a lot of times you want to do, this is something that Evan Pagan came up with. It's called moving the free line. And so basically you're giving someone something really valuable for free, and they're wondering, wow, if he or she helps me this much for free, what could happen if I pay for it? And so let's say in the case of the trainer, you're giving them some good input on their deadlift. You're kind of helping them solve that problem before they've even entertained the idea of paying you. And then you say, hey, I'd love to design a program for you. And then you kind of go into the idea of making this to a full service solution by showing them what they can get just with a little bit of your knowledge, kind of bringing them into your sales funnel, as it were, and saying, hey, let's talk about designing a full program for you. And you can transition into that by just having a really good presentation and a really good offering of what you have to provide,
Yeah, we've seen this, or I've heard this echoed several different times. Like, hey, what can I offer for free up front as like a sample? Well, shoot, like if you go into Costco, that's why they're giving you free samples, because they want you to buy the stuff.
Exactly.
But like, the Bryan Harris method of, hey, I made this video for you off your most popular infographic. You're free to use as you like it. If this is something you'd be interested in, on an ongoing basis, let me know. And just like, whoa, blow them away with that free thing. And then it's like, oh my gosh, I want more. I'm hooked now. Yeah,
exactly. And I mean, you have to think about it. There's also a little bit of, I guess, reciprocity at play there. So if you're giving something away for free and someone really, really enjoys it, they almost feel semi-obligated to at least continue the conversation with you for a while, right?
Yeah.
And there's actually this interesting experiment. I don't know if you heard about it. It's in the 70s, I believe. And the psychologists at a university were doing this experiment where they had obviously like an unaware participant in the room, and then they had someone who was in cahoots with the researchers. And so the person on the research team was sitting in there with the unaware student, and he got up and he said, hey, I'm going to go to the bathroom and grab a Coke. Do you want one? Right? And if the unaware student said, whether they said yes or no, the researcher would come back in and would give them a small ask afterwards, like, hey, can I borrow $1? Or hey, can I borrow $1 or $2 for this? I need to go buy something.
Okay.
And what they would find is that whether the original participant decided to grab a Coke with them or not in the beginning, that act of the researcher asking beforehand, hey, can I get you something, increased the likelihood that the participant would give them more money.
Yeah,
right?
I bet.
And it's just the idea of, well, this person wanted to do something nice for me, and I'll do something nice for them back.
Yeah.
And it's just an easy little psychological loophole that we can use by giving away a lot of free value first, and then just making a very simple offering. It doesn't need to be like a sneaky sales pitch. It's like, hey, I've already shown you something cool I can do. Let's continue this work.
Yeah, some psychological hacks. Definitely, if you haven't already, check out the book Influence by Robert Cialdini.
Yeah, there's no other book you should read on persuasion. It's the book.
It's one of my absolute favorites.
Yeah.
So how do we kind of continually fill this funnel? That's the challenge. Like, I've done all this work, I've done all this hustle to land this one client. But what's after that? Maybe I'm happy with that as a side hustle. But if I want to grow this thing, I'm gonna have to move up in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple of things. I think the first thing is you'll refine your method as you start finding people who might need your services and you start approaching them. It's the biggest thing in the beginning is the fear of rejection, right? The fear of like, okay, well, I did this once, it kind of worked, but like, I don't know if I can keep doing this. I don't want to get rejected. I don't know how many more people will actually want to buy my services. And so the first thing I like to think about is, if I can get my first 3 clients under my belt, I know I have a real thing. Like, I know this is a real quote unquote business, and so your first kind of objective,
why 3?
I don't know. Because I think like one could be like your mom, and the other one might be like, oh, well, maybe they're just doing it because they feel bad for me. But if I can get 3 paying clients, I feel like this is a real thing.
Okay. Okay.
And so I think your first goal should be to get your first 3 paying clients, right? And then from there, you're going to deal with everything that kind of a full-time freelancer would deal with in building your funnel. And it's just overcoming objections. Like, to get more clients, you have to learn how to overcome objections. Because what's going to happen is you're going to get a couple clients, you're going to be feeling good. But then you're going to start encountering trouble when people give you pushback, right? Sometimes it gets harder. And as a side hustle, you have to know the hustle part of it, which is overcoming things that people might say to shut you down.
Yeah, there's always, hey, your price is too high, or exactly. I just had this website built 7 years ago. I don't need another one yet.
Well, right. And it's like demoralizing too, because like if you know your services are really good, but no one else does yet, or you know they're really good, but people give you some sort of like objection that you don't know how to overcome. You're like, well, I guess we just won't do any work then. I don't know what to say to you, you know?
Yeah.
And so
what do you say?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, in my mind, there are like, I don't know, 6 or 7 key objections. So the biggest one, obviously, you just mentioned it, right? Is price. So your price is too high. Another one is kind of like external input, right? So if you're offering to do landscaping services and someone's like, well, I better check with my husband. You know, that sometimes is just like an objection so they don't have to spend money right there, even if they want the service. Mm-hmm. Another thing is complacency. So it's kind of the thing you mentioned with the website, like, well, we just had this done 7 years ago. No need to really look into this. Mm-hmm. Another one could be like scheduling, timing. So, you know, oh, well, it's not the right time, you know, come back later. Again, that's kind of putting off the inevitable. One of my favorites is personal politics. So you'll have things like, oh yeah, well, you know, I'd love to have you train me, but I already promised my girlfriend's cousin that he could train me, so I wouldn't want to mess that up. You know, things like that. Things, personal politics, things where people have personal reasons why. Another one would be like fear of change. Like, well, you know, I don't want to mess things up. I just learned this new system. Why would I want to switch to another system? And then I guess the last one would probably just be trust. Like, they don't know you, and so they don't trust you enough yet.
Right. Yeah, you're coming in relatively, even though it's, you know, warm canvassing, it's still like, wait a minute, you know, who is this guy? Yeah,
exactly. And so there's trust. So I think the first and most important thing that we need to deal with is price, because I think, you know, remember, sometimes there's going to be a mixture of multiple of these objections at one time, but I think price is usually always an issue, especially when you're learning how to find your ideal clients in the beginning. And so the biggest thing with price is that you have to, the solution to solving the price is like, well, you need to show them how much value they're actually getting from your service. So people will say things like, well, you know, this costs too much, or I can get the same service from someone else cheaper, or especially in the case of web design, like I'll just pay someone in India, you know, $50 to do it while I would pay you $5,000.
Yeah.
Right. And so you can say, well, you know, you can do that, but you need to show them what they can get from you that they can't get from anyone else. And you need to give them reasons, you know, why your prices are so high compared to competitors. And you also need to kind of highlight the risks that they encounter when going with a cheaper service. And this is a little bit doom and gloom. It's kind of like when we were talking about like the calling a baby ugly thing. It's kind of like, all right, well, you can get you know this website done for $200 on Elance, but you're probably not going to get exactly what you want. And there's probably going to be a language barrier where you don't really know how to communicate exactly what needs to be done. And you might end up getting 2 or 3, you know, $200 websites before you actually get what you want. Why don't we just do it right the first time, you know?
Yeah. Well, one cool thing, we didn't really touch on this, but on the pricing side, like by proactively going after these customers and kind of giving your value first, it's not like we're on Elance, you're starting from a much weaker position. On like it's a price bid system. Like, you know, people will put the job out for bid, and, you know, there's most people, I hope, will kind of like take out the outliers on the low and high side. But it's, you know, it's still like the price is, you know, it's right up there, like for topic of conversation. Whereas like if you're the only provider that they're talking to because you brought it to their attention, like all of a sudden you kind of are in a position of better control there.
No, that's a really good point. And I guess the only thing I'll say to that is with Elance, I never reveal my prices before, because you can click a little box that says discuss price later, or, you know, omit the price. And so I always omit it. And sometimes people will just not even talk to you because you haven't mentioned a specific price. But I tend to I don't like leading with price, because I know that the easiest way to kind of get eliminated quickly is have a high price and show it early. You know?
Yeah. Okay.
Even if you're the best service, people are like, ugh, I don't want to pay that. So you have to kind of show them some value first before you can justify showing them an expensive price. But the idea with pricing is no matter what your price is, if you have a value that can back it up, then you can justify it. And if you are not able to overcome the objection about price, then you haven't shown them value enough. So for instance, if you're offering to build someone's website and you're just like, yeah, we'll make it look really nice, $5,000, like that's too much. But if you say, we'll make it look really nice, and not only that, but we're going to show you how to, build a system into it that that creates an autoresponder and gets you more clients and generates more money for you, and here are some specific numbers and X, Y, Z, show them how it's really going to improve their business, you're going to provide enough value up front so that they can see why your price would be justified,
Yeah, definitely. This is good stuff. Rich20something.com is the website. Anywhere else people should go if they want to learn more about freelance domination and all the other stuff you got going on?
Yeah, man. So I put something together really cool. I put together just a little mini course on developing a freelance idea, building it out into something that's actually real, and getting your first client. And so if you just go to rich20something.com/side hustle, which is in homage to you, Nick.
Thank you.
rich20something.com/side hustle. You can get all the details there and get access to the free little mini course put together for you.
Very cool. Thank you for that, Daniel.
Yeah, man. No problem.
Last year, I asked you for your number one tip for Side Hustle Nation. You remember what you said?
I don't know. What did I say?
Cultivate the skills and the passion will follow.
That's really smart.
It sounded very deep when I had to go look that up. Cultivate the skills and the passion will follow. Curious, has that changed over the course of the year, or have you got something new?
My new one for this year is just wing it, whatever. For today, I think that for me over the past year, what I've learned is that the less I have to do, the more I get done. So for me, the biggest insight I've had over the past 12 months is kind of striking away the unnecessary and leaving only the necessary. And as I've taken on less and less projects, the projects that I do take on have become exponentially more successful. The quality of my work has gotten better. And so I think that maybe we assume that many of the things that we are presented with are essential, when really we might only have 2 or 3 essential things in our life, and we should focus on the most essential things and kind of strike away some of the superfluous outliers and streamline what we think we have to be doing so that we can do what we're really, tasked with much better quality and speed in many cases.
I love that. I've been I'm trying to study the one thing and essentialism this year. Yeah. And the less I have to do, the more I get done. That's really good stuff. I love it. Daniel, thanks so much for joining us. We'll catch up with you soon.
It's a pleasure, Nick. Thank you.
There it is. I really enjoyed that chat with Daniel from rich20something.com, and hopefully you did as well. Got a lot of juicy takeaways. Be sure to hit up rich20something.com/side hustle to check out Daniel's free mini course on freelancing he's put together for us, and grab the extended show notes with all his top tips from this call at sidehustlenation.com/111. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, let's go out there and make something happen. And I'll see you in the next edition of The Side Hustle Show. Hustle on.
Thanks for listening to The Side Hustle Show at www.sidehustlenation.com.